Hi everyone, my name is Melissa Teresa. I'm an artist here in Nashville. I've been the resident artist of the Film Mechanics Studios for about 5 years. My studio is right behind this refrigerator door. My art consists of screen-printed ceramic tiles, mixed media, sculpture, and some performance art. As an artist, I feel really strong about setting goals for myself, and the way that I do that is a lot of the time it's just making lots of checklists and consistently writing things down so that I can remember everything that I need to do, and all the other things that we have to do in life as far as jobs and daily tasks. But when making art, creating art, my first goal is to find a way to build intellectual and philosophical bridges between subjects using imagery, symbols, and design. A lot of the subjects that I'm interested in that you can see in my work relate to society and environment, mass media, healthcare, politics, money, etc., etc. In my work, I think about how I can successfully juxtapose cultural, historical, and political references, encouraging multiple truths and realities. So, one of my biggest struggles with art is finding the balance of making art and making money. We live in a money-based society. We all know how much money doctors and lawyers make, but we're less clear on how much money artists make, not to mention what they have to do in order to make it. Today I came with 4 questions. The first one is, how do you bring in money in a way that doesn't feel like a soul-draining day job, without requiring that your art be commercially successful? And what is the in-between? How do you make people appreciate your art and feel like it's worth owning? How do you document your art in ways that increase the appeal to potential buyers? And how to price your art and answer questions about your prices. So those are my 4 big questions for the panel.
Okay, so what I'm thinking is maybe the last question, because it's about pricing, we could pull off because I think for the next panel.
Sure.
But otherwise, let's start with the first one. How to bring in money in a way that doesn't feel like a soul-draining day job.
Oh yeah, I want to know that.
So maybe you could hand the...
Well, actually, there's another microphone for you. Right here.
And Wendy, if you could introduce yourself first, that'd be great.
Who am I? I'm Wendy Outland. I have a consulting business for artists and arts organizations known as Pinos Art, and I have a space in Liberal Arts District, Riverside Studios. The soul-draining phrase really caught my attention because I tend to be a very positive person and take it that you want to. And I think that anything we do in life, if we're doing what we love, we can make it fun. And what took me a long time to learn in my professional life, I've been an arts administrator for 31 years, and it took me a long time to learn that it's okay to be silly and fun, in certain contexts. And when you're developing programs, even when you're selling, when you're promoting, part of it is not taking ourselves too seriously, but really having fun. Make somebody smile, they're on your team. So I'd say that's the number one thing that comes to my mind.
Hi, my name is Gwen Workamorada, and I'm the executive director at Handmade in America. And Jean asked me to just do a little spiel about Handmade since it was mentioned earlier this morning and I couldn't be here. We are an economic and community development organization that grows economies through craft. We oversee the 25 counties of Western North Carolina, and we do this through entrepreneurship, economic development, and education. So And then on the education side, we do a buy local campaign. We have a couple business incubator projects that we're launching. Some of you may have read or heard about our new CSA, Community Supported Art Program that we're launching, which is kind of an exciting endeavor. And we also do a lot of advocacy. So right now, as many of you can guess, we're doing a ton of advocacy out in the city of Asheville, Macomb County, but also with the state of North Carolina, as well as the federal government. Two of my employees just came back from Washington, D.C. for Arts Advocacy Day for the last 2 days. So in a nutshell, that's what Handmade does. If you want to know more, you go to our website, which is handmadeamerica.org. It's an interesting question that you ask, because I think that it's, no matter what your profession is, I think this is a constant. I'm an arts administrator. I'm originally trained as a glass artist, but no matter what I've ever been doing, a curator, administrator, making art, there's always a point where it feels soul-sucking. It's just kind of, I think, unfortunately part of life when you have a job of any kind. And so figuring out ways, I think I like your idea of being positive, being fun. If you're feeling it is soul-sucking and you're losing the passion, I also think that also is very reflective in your work. And so to me, it means it's time for you to figure out a way to re-energize the work that you do or what you're doing. Because you don't ever, whether you're a production artist or you're a one-of-a-kind artist, you don't want to ever get to a point where you're burnt out and you don't want to do your art at all. And so, recognizing the signs and realizing that there's something, maybe it's taking a class, maybe it's changing and trying other techniques. I mean, it can get that way. And knowing that it can get that way and being okay with it. Don't try to fight it. Embrace it, say, try new things, maybe it's time to try something different or go on vacation. And I think there's some different ways that you can kind of shake it up to help kind of re-energize yourself. But it is a challenge, and I think knowing that every artist goes through that sometimes helps with that challenge. And it's not just artists, again, it's an arts administrator. Trust me, there's certain times where I burnt out or felt like I was in a soul-sucking job. So it's definitely a challenge.
Some advice I was thinking was maybe a lot of companies are going to raise capital from people that really believe in what they're doing. And so if you can sort of surround yourself and kind of network with folks that see your art and value it, and maybe you might be a good investor in your projects. And I don't know about the crowdsourcing, use those sorts of funds or really talk about companies or businesses that got it right. That may be another way to kind of present your idea and get crowdsource funding. It would be it seems like that would be most supportive for approaching ideas.
Melissa, can you read your second question again?
Oh, I just have one more quick comment on the first one. There's a book out there called Art and Fear, and I know many people use it. To me, when I feel burnt out, that's a book I commonly turn to remind myself how to be creative again and how to maybe approach things with a different kind of way. So I just thought of that. And so those of you who haven't read it, it is like a half an hour, 45-minute read. It's a very quick book, but it's really about working on your brain. As an artist, it's not always about just making actual product. But sometimes you need to make sure you take time to work on what's going on in your brain. When you're forming in your brain, what I call your creativeness. And so as an artist, it's a tougher job because it's not just about making. There's a balance between making and business. But then part of your making to keep yourself healthy is working just on what's up here, because this is where you make your most genius work. It's Ted Orlando and Michael Bales or Baines. I'm close. They're two authors, Ted and Michael, and I think it's Orlando and Bales. But it's Art and Fear. And it's a great book. I highlight it, I make notes. I guess my other question is, how many of you all have a sketchbook? Do you guys have a sketchbook? Because to me, I also find that's part of that time of year is having that sketchbook where I'm a horrible sketcher, so I would never show my sketchbook to anybody because I'm embarrassed. But I also have lists in there. I also use, I pull out inspiration. I love fashion magazines because I let the colors and kind of what's happening in fashion often dictates the kind of work that I make, because I make jewelry or wearable items, and of course, what's on trend is going to sell. And so, putting out inspirational pictures from magazines and stuff. So that's another way to help kind of take time to keep your sketchbook and your idea book up and running and constantly updated to give yourself a break from the making.
question was documenting art and how I should document my art in ways that it increases its appeal to potential buyers.
One of the things that I have always recommended to artists and find real helpful for a potential buyer is if you can photograph your work in an environment or on a person, depending on what kind of work you make, instead of just doing the flat, full-front, image of your work, which is what most people ask you to submit. If you're trying to sell it and you want to put it on your website to make it interesting, show it on a residential wall or outdoors in a beautiful manicured lawn or in the woods if that's where it was meant to be. Show it where you think it would look best if the right person bought it, put it in the right spot.
Obviously, I'm like Wendy. You want to document everything by photographs. So if you're making something, make sure you take a photograph, even if it's a non-formal photograph of everything that you made before it goes out the door. I don't know how many times as a glass artist I didn't take a picture of that color combination and then would try to go back and the first piece is already gone and had to guess at what it looked like because I didn't have that. So I think that's really important. But taking it even a little bit further, when it talks about how do you document your work, there's another way of documentation that's writing. I think a lot of people as artists are not very good at writing, but if you can write really well about your work or other people's work, that helps you talk better about it, that helps you document it better through writing, and there's a lot of opportunity for artists to actually get to know their work now through being active in writing other people's work. And so there's some kind of really interesting ways that you can accidentally attract a wider audience by having opportunities or seeking out opportunities to write about your work or somebody else's. And when I talk about that, it could be a blog. Maybe there's somebody's interested in doing a blog entry. I know at Handmade, we do weekly blog entries, and we often have guest bloggers. And so you could write about your work, and it could be a guest blog on Handmade's website. Or I know American Craft Magazine is always looking for writers and article ideas. So I know that there's other types of journals like that are always looking for that. So thinking about that is another way that people often forget about documenting their work and giving them a wider audience to know about their work through that.
I don't think I have anything to add on this one.
One other thought is just to track your sales and keep documentation on that because it can help you in terms of spreading the word of those.
Okay, and then a question, making people feel like your art is worth owning. How would one go about that?
Wow, that's a good one.
Smile. One of the things that always comes to mind is that often with fine art particularly, we get the long view. We see something from afar in an exhibit. I like the approach of looking closer. And if you see someone interested in your work or someone's in your studio, you take them up to your piece. I've just created this great door here. I like the texture. These are hand-forged hinges. And I want you to come with me over here and look at this block right here. And I'm going to tell you why I put it in upside down. Just put them in and get them to look really closely. And in the storytelling, hopefully they'll be asking questions or giving you feedback. And you're going to get them to appreciate your work more and realize there's much more to it than just and it's done.
I think telling your story is a really important part of getting people to like their work. You have to know how to tell your story really well, really passionately. There's parts of the story, when you think about a story that really grabs you, there's different parts of it that grab you. And can you relate to that story? So you want to make it relatable to anybody you talk to. So sometimes I find that when people talk too esoterically about their work, whether it's an artist statement or the way that they introduce it, it loses the general public real quickly because a lot of times the general public doesn't get it. And if they feel like the joke's on them and you're making fun of their inability to get it, you're going to never get that person as a customer. And so do you make your work in the medium that you work in? That's a question a lot of artists don't answer. I know full well why I work in class, especially high class. I am impatient. I am somebody that needs an immediate result. I started out training as a painter, and it takes way too long for me to finish painting. You know how many unfinished paintings I have in my studio space? You know what I mean? So, knowing that, and then talking to people about that. I mean, I just was telling my story just now. But I told you in a little bit, like getting some people to laugh and humor. So I think, knowing that is a great way to be passionate, to learn to be passionate and talk all about your work. That is how you're going to pull people in. I keep trying to give that to you, and then I feel like I'm choking.
Yeah, I think that I don't know if I have much to add. It seems like a lot of artists that have been successful and also been good salespeople. Not that they're artists any better than the other folks, but I think of Dolly, I think of people like that, they were actually really good at sales.
Yeah.
Well, my last question had to do about pricing, so I know that we're going to be talking about that next, so I'll just save it.
Okay,
Yes.
thank you, Melissa. Appreciate it. Is Sean here?
Don't see him comment.
Okay, then Lorraine, we're ready for you. You can introduce.
I'm Lorraine Plexico. I have done two completely different kinds of art in my career. I
I think people can't hear you.
Okay. Start over?
Yeah.
Okay, sorry. This is Lorraine Plexico, and I have done two different types of artwork my whole life. I started out loving landscape painting and drawing. That was my major permanent studio art. I didn't think that would ever get me a job, so I went into interior design and eventually worked for an architect, learned how to do renderings, perspectives, and then went out on my own. So I've been in that field for about 29 years, probably 27 on my own. I moved up here in the 90s, and it really did pretty well to work with architects, builders for the homes, and just a lot of the buildings going on around here. It gave me satisfaction. I was working as an artist, and I was doing something by hand versus by the computer. I won't say it did a lot for me, just when I want to draw a lot of fancy houses, but, I was glad I could do that. I was able to add a studio to my house and start drawing again in pastels after many years. And for my first show, I called Sabrina Outland to help me. Just how do you go about this, assessing it, pricing and all that, and I called her later for another show. So she's been for Bear Star, and I had a show here with Jolene at the home. And then somewhere in there, when the building world started to go down, I seemed to have more time to go out and do landscape drawing. So that was really lovely. That was a good, I would probably have done that. And then I won't go into a kind of long story of how I went from doing pastels, and I had them in shows, cooperative galleries, art safari at festivals. I entered trying to make money with art, at prints. I did a lot of things with it, and still have them in a gallery. But then this other part of the story happened that I found this process and decided I wanted to try to put them onto plexiglass to hang in windows. My first place that I went was the VA hospital. They had seen something in a show. I went over there and they started talking about me putting them there in the patient rooms. And we were actually with one of the samples in the infusion room and just holding it up. And this patient that was there, all hooked up in his infusion, was looking at it with a whole lot of, smiling and talking about it. And I think it was just about then that I said, I want to do this, and I want to do it in a medical kind of place. There's one satisfaction to selling my drawing or painting. It'll be somebody's house, But this kind of thought, when I thought about the big picture of it, that it could be a lot of different places, really, really appealed to me. I took Mount Lisbon's class, the Foundations class, which I can't tell you enough how great that is. It helps develop all these ideas and even just believe that it's possible. I did the business plan and I do that. So I had to come up with a name for it, and I found out how to go about getting a logo, so I started to do that. by. You can't, I mean, it looks nice like it is, but it's just something about the light coming through it that makes them just kind of take on another whole dimension.
I'll just take it around.
And I have one that is also transparent, so you can see it from both sides. I developed the name is Mind's Eye Window, through Mountain Works. I came up with the idea because I was with my mother a lot in medical environments over the last years. And she had had a surgery and was lying there with her eyes closed, with a big smile on her face, and said, "Oh, I see the mountains. They look like Virginia." So we had a conversation about those, and she still had her eyes closed, but she seemed so happy looking at these mountains in her mind, you know. So I thought about it as a name, and that was what I would like to do, is offer to people in really, that are in really serious medical conditions. And I think hospice was one of my first ones. The dog therapy team, I do that. And just the idea of people who don't have a whole lot of things to look forward to, or they're in pain. And if you could just offer something, and when you hang on a piece in the window, the light comes through it, and somebody just kind of goes, "Oh," you know, it just feels like it offers them a moment to step away from whatever they're experiencing and go look at this beautiful field or stream. And I love being there when I drew it. So it's been a wonderful way to come around to this that I didn't ever plan. But it feels more important to me than any other thing I've ever done, because it means something to me. And my artwork can actually be helpful. So I have been working on it, on my business. And I'm liking that word because I've been thinking it was procrastinated, but I really didn't feel like that. I thought I was going to be ready in January. But I've gone through 3 different companies to produce these particular pictures. I just picked these up last week. But since 2011, I think I've probably spent over $7,000 in startup funds, all kinds of things. So what I was wanting is to find another alternate source for funding to kind of repay the startup funds. And up until probably 2 weeks ago, I was going to be doing Kickstarter, because I heard about that. I also found Works. But the artist I copy said this will not qualify. I'm sure of it, because it just has to be a finite project with an ending and a product that's not starting up. So it's one of the questions, and I've already heard some of those today, about some alternative, there's Angel Foundations. She said there were other ones that did do startup, but I haven't yet found those. And Noah Draper, I will say, he's been a really great person to work with. Everybody, Dwayne, Wendy, Jolene, everybody. It's just been great. And then I saw in the paper that all of them are going to be together, and I called, and you said, "Well, it's an artist, you wouldn't be one." I said, "Sure." So I felt very lucky. I don't know how many towns have this kind of support for entrepreneurship and for artists. I think we're very fortunate, and I really appreciate everybody here that has done so much for ongoing people starting up their entrepreneurs.
Was your first question about?
The first question is about the funding.
Okay, all right. This options.
Well, I guess I might try some of the other crowdfunding sites. If Kickstarter doesn't, I don't know much about Kickstarter. What does the Arts Council here have grant money at all? I've heard sometimes not much.
Did anybody answer that? Does the Arts Council have grants?
I can.
Okay.
Sorry.
I'm sorry.
I can answer it. Okay, so right now, the Arts Council, I know one of the grants that they do is called the Arts in the Park, and they read grants for that. I don't know the timing of that. I think that went out at the beginning of the year, and so I think for this year it's done until the end. There's also from the North Carolina Arts Council, there are what we call grassroots grants for nonprofits, but there's what they're called, oh my gosh, I'm going to not think of it. It's RAPG is what they call it. And it's called RAPG. The Toe River Arts Council oversees it for Welcome County. It will probably be sometime this summer, and it's for small amounts of funding for individual artists to do something. So to buy capital, which would be a machine, a kiln, something like that. They like something hard like that. But that's your answer to the grants for that.
What about hospice? Are they purchasing?
While I was taking the class, I called Care Partners, and I was really fact-finding, and then they said, oh, the person you want to talk to is the head of the foundation, he's here, you want to speak to him? And I said, yes, I'm not ready. But then he wanted to see them, so I quickly got together a logo, you know, as much as I could, I took it. And sure enough, in 6 weeks, he purchased 10. So the best part about this time going by is that last week I picked up my samples from Charlotte. I also got a sample of a 2x4 fluorescent light cover, and I just said, well, I'm just going to buy one and see if it works, and it does. So I photographed that. And then last week I went to Care Partners and took pictures of rooms, patient rooms, waiting room, a gym, and it was cloudy that day, so the next morning when it was sunny, I took pictures of them in my window and photoshopped it. so I'm putting that on my website.
Lorraine, also, Elise over here got a comment.
I want to address the funding issue once more. I think based on your question, a couple things. If you are wanting to borrow money to pay yourself back, it's not going to happen. I mean, correct me, the bankers here if I'm wrong. That's your investment in your company. The banks, I mean, why should they invest in your company if you're not going to? So don't look for capital to pay yourself back. Look for capital to expand, to buy materials, to buy a kiln, as Gwen said, to grow your business, but not to pay yourself back. I want to address the crowdsourcing like Kickstarter and Indiegogo. Again, this is my experience. I don't know about you, but I'm personally tired of getting requests from people asking me to fund their business. Come on, you got to be able to fund your own business one way or another. There's not a lot. How many of you here are going to fund somebody else's business? There's been so many demands being set out, like, oh, I'm starting a business, and can you give me I'm raising $5,000. You're shaking your head. I'm tired of it. I'm personally not funding anybody else's business anymore. That's that. Maybe you will. I'm tired of it, so don't send me any Kickstarter campaign requests. And the third one I want to say is Mike, who was here this morning talking about those new financial instruments of SBA. There are a couple banks that are promoting the small advantage loan, again, up to $25,000 without collateral. So for every $5,000 you borrow, I believe the loan payment is $84 a month. So it's pretty good. And if I don't know how long this loan program is going to stay. The last one went away quickly during the downturn. But now, if you're thinking about it, I'm not encouraging anyone to borrow money unless they absolutely have to, and if you can support the loan payment and it's going to grow your business. If it's not going to grow your business and you're just looking for a salary, it's not. The banks aren't lending for that.
We do need to kind of move along, so you say your next question.
The next question is, I took the QuickBooks class that they take as well, take Excel, and I'm wondering if anybody knows of a good way to handle when purchasing orders come in. Is there a way to really handle them well without being an accounting person? I'm going to get a bookkeeper to help me, but I need to have hands-on to it. So just to track it from different companies, size and all that. And I've heard QuickBooks doesn't do that as well, but does anybody know something that will?
Actually, QuickBooks, it depends on what version you have. The QuickBooks does have the ability to maintain what we call an inventory and then process POs and purchase orders through it. So if you are comfortable with QuickBooks, it's probably what I would recommend is to learn that way. And then if you bring in a personal bookkeeper, he should be able to be proficient ideally in QuickBooks and then should be able to. But absolutely, you can maintain purchase orders, inventory, supplies, all invoices, due, everything in QuickBooks. So it does have that capability.
Oh, I thought that's my purpose, but I just didn't know how complex it would get.
It can get a little complex, but again, I always find those dummies books, how-to dummies books, are really amazing. I taught myself more things by just going to the library and renting one of those, QuickBooks for Dummies or Word for Dummies, or when I was trying to figure out how to do a bunch of formulas in Excel to do cash flow projections for my business, Excel for Dummies. I mean, those are really great ways to sit down inexpensive ways to kind of sit down and take the time to teach yourself something. I do also want to go back to your second question that you just meant before this. And the way that you're going to do that is increasing sales. I mean, really, bottom line, that's what it's going to be about. Denise, I echo exactly. Nobody's ever going to invest in you. They're not going to invest in your salary, and they're not going to invest in you paying yourself back for out-of-pocket expenses. When people start up their own business, no matter what you are, whether you're an artist, whether you're a restaurant, nobody in this investor will ever pay for you to have a salary. So if you go in front of anybody and say, I want money to give me a salary, you'll get laughed out of whatever room you're in. If you ever watch Shark Tank? Does anybody ever watch Shark Tank on TV? It's a great show. Sunday nights, I don't remember NBC, I think it is, but if you get a chance to watch it, watch what? It's called Shark Tank. It is entrepreneurs pitch their ideas to major millionaire investors like Mark Cuban, who owns the Dallas Mavericks. But you learn so much about what not to do in that, and I find that that's a really great show. But really the way you're going to generate money is through generating sales. And so thinking about ways that this could be marketed, even not just locally, but on a larger scale, because I think it's going to be probably major sales, major orders that are going to do that for you. I also, before you leave today, catch me, because I just had a conversation with the owner of a company called Voice Books. And what she's done is she's invented a little MP3 player that if somebody's sick or needs to get better or has a life kind of, whether it's a birthday, a marriage, or an anniversary, you can call into this number, and you pass it out to all your friends, and they call in and record a message. And then you can purchase an object that the voice recording comes with, and this could be a potential good match. Before you leave, let me find it.
I have one more that's more of a suggestion than a question. It's probably short. Okay. The other one would be just to handle, and I've handled it before, but this just seems like it's going to be a lot more of just handling the minutia, the paperwork, the receipts, and all that sort of thing. I know Laurie McCarrier out at the River Arts District has something called Evernote for Artists. I don't know if y'all heard about it, and I've purchased it. I haven't yet gone on it. But I know that you can scan things like business cards, and then they become, textable. You can edit them, put them into a source. She said it's a great way to keep up with all that stuff. I was going to ask if there's anything else you know of, but it sounds really good to me.
What did they call it?
It's called Evernote for Artists, and Evernote is an app. It's a free app. But Laurie McCarrier, she's called artistinc.com, and I think you can purchase that from her. She's put together kind of a guide to that, and how she sees it, the apps that artists particularly can use. So her name's Laurie McCarrier, artistinc.com.
Okay, thank you. Okay, is Sean here? Is it Jinx? Is that Sean? Yeah. Come on up. Hey, Jinx. So you can just give a brief introduction and then ask your questions.
Hi, my name is Sean Pace.
We have to hold
kinetic
that up,
artist. Is that better? Everyone hear me? All right. So I'm a kinetic artist. I build in a lot of different forms: steel, concrete, wood, plastic. I paint, and I just try to run the gamut. I say creativity is my song, and I'm here to sing or something like that. And here, I guess my first question is where do you think I can get a haircut? You might know where that question was pointed. So I'm like the reluctant business person. I hate paperwork more than anything. I hate filling out taxes. I hate all of those types of things. So the one thing that I've been bouncing around a lot in my mind is just trying to find an agent who would, is that what a lot of people do when they find somebody that does all the things that they hate?
It's called a Sherpa.
I'm an agent that I can call Sherpa.
You need to hand them the mic.
That question about agent, I get that a lot too. Who doesn't want somebody who will take care story, according to what I've learned since I started my consulting business, is that the really good, really kick-butt agents only work with wood chip artists. You know, once you've made it, once you're really well known and you're rolling in the dough, then they're interested in you. The ones that say they will work with you at the level most of us are at here today, they're going to take your money and you're not going to get much out of it. That's what I've learned. I've talked to a lot of artists that have hired people locally, regionally, nationally, and been disappointed. So that's the conclusion I've come to. And I'm sorry to be the bearer of bad news, but once you get really famous, then you will. They'll be looking for you.
So when you say agent, you're thinking of someone that actually does the sale and forging. Is that what you're because I mean, I know that there are artists that hire somebody like a bookkeeper to do their workbooks, or that they hire somebody like an administrative person to, you know, do the administrative side of their business, and they don't like that. So I do know that there are affordable options of that out there. It's just kind of throwing it up on Craigslist and seeing what you might get, you know, that kind of thing, asking around. Going to visit some of the artists in the, even in the River Arts District that you know are maybe kind of at a higher level of sales so that they might employ somebody to do that for them. I know an artist that hates doing the shipping, so she just has somebody come in at $8 an hour, high school student after school, to do her shipping for her. She hates packaging and shipping that. So, you know, there are those kind of options, but also at the same time, we're entrepreneurs as artists. We're running our own businesses, and unfortunately, it's the life of an entrepreneur in general. So you have to do a bunch of stuff, including paperwork that you don't like to do. And as makers, we hate it even more because we're not naturally inclined to the bookkeeping aspect of the business side of things. But you grow and learn as you force yourself outside of your comfort zone. And so again, I'm a big believer that if you push yourself outside your comfort zone, no matter what you're doing, whether it's making something or forcing yourself to do your business paperwork, you're going to grow and learn from that, and that's kind of, to me, the ultimate reason why we do these things. But it's just kind of part of life. I think we all do things we don't want to do. I certainly hate emptying the dishwasher. So if I can have my dogs trained to empty the dishwasher for me, I feel that.
Okay, so I got shot down about I kind of expected that would happen anyway. So my next question is, for me, Asheville is kind of a very slow market. You know, any kind of money that I'm able to bring in, I can only bring it in from writing grants or, you know, proposals and stuff like that, or being able to shop outside of this. I always say it's a great place to live, terrible place to make a living. You know? Yeah. And I also call Asheville the most comfortable couch I've ever got off of. But one of the things that I think that kind of challenges me when I go to a new city or something like that, I walk in and there's always, you know, a gallery that you think, okay, maybe these guys could represent you or something. You know, and you have to do your research and check out on them and stuff. But like, for instance, Jimmy O'Neill, who I don't think is here today or whatever, but he has had some pretty crazy experiences with the Lowe Gallery in Atlanta, to where you know, he put in $60,000 worth of work, he'd sell it, and he wouldn't get paid back. And so, you know, dealing with galleries is kind of, from his experience, it's just been like, I don't know if I even want to get into that. And then on the other hand of that same issue is like walking in with a cold call, you know, being like, hey, this is me, what can you do with me? So on those two kind of comments, I guess my question is like, you know, how can you safely steer through those checkered waters?
Okay, you're right about the store market thing. It's a tough thing to sell where you live. It's, you know, community this size, even though we have a lot of tourists who come through here. And as far as the Bill Lowe question, I have a client who has just this year consulted with me to ask questions about the stories and the recent press and all of that, and I warned her ahead of time because there's been years and years and years of this kind of history, and yet he's still in business. So she went ahead and she has sold 2 pieces, and she has been promoted very well, and she has a really good relationship with him straight up, and I'm just crossing my fingers. A lot of artists take that kind of risk for that kind of opportunity just to have the exposure. I've had artists that I knew from Blue Spiral One days that's told me point blank, I knew it going in, I wasn't surprised when it happened, that is, didn't get paid on time, but I just wanted it on my resume that I had been in a major Atlanta gallery. So, sometimes it had to wait a really long time, up to a year or so, for it to get, we should have gotten the next month, but they got it, so that's that. As far as cold calls to galleries, having managed them for a lot of years, and going around the country and seeing places, like so many businesses, galleries are usually understaffed and overworked, and if artists come in all the time and try to get their attention, they get real cranky. What I always recommend is, definitely, if you're interested in a gallery or just if you're visiting another city, go and check out, ask about, when you get there years ago, and ask for the top galleries and go see them. See how they do things, see how they display artwork, see what kind of work they display. What I hear a lot from my clients is that they're disappointed because ABC Gallery rejected them. And I always say, maybe they didn't reject you, they just didn't think they could sell your work. Because if your work fits into what they know their market is, they're going to bring you in the door. They want to make money. That's why they exist. So if you don't get in, don't feel rejected. Just remember to ask 2 questions. First of all, you don't know what the reason is. Maybe it's not because your work isn't appropriate. Maybe it's because they already have an artist in their stable that is too similar to what you're doing, and they've invested time and money in that individual. They don't want to draw the lines there. But that artist could move on. So ask them, may I reapply in 6 months to a year? Always ask. And then, regardless of what answer you get, ask, can you recommend anywhere else that I might apply? Because they've looked at your work, they've gotten to know you a bit, even if it's only on paper, and maybe they will say, sure, we can make some recommendations right here in town. So don't be shy about asking.
I just have a couple little points. First of all, I'm kind of getting a little incense, like Denise was earlier about people asking for money to pay themselves back. I get tired of hearing artists in Asheville say, boy, Asheville's really letting me down because I can't make a living here. That is the worst business plan an artist can do, is have one small market like Asheville. I mean, that is no artist. If you look at artists in New York City, they're not making a living just in New York City. They sell all over the United States. You, as an artist, have to expand your market and not expect, wherever you live, Asheville or elsewhere, to be big enough to support your work. That is setting yourself up for failure and an unsustainable business model. So that's just not my first comment on that. So yes, Asheville's a soft market. It'll always going to be a soft market, and you should never expect that it should be your only market. Diversifying your markets as an artist is key. Do you do pieces of work that's appropriate for public art? There's a lot of really wonderful public art opportunities that are massive money for small cost pieces that are out there. So that's a really wonderful avenue to help diversify your market and to find other avenues that are not gallery avenues. And then, going to the gallery itself, cold calls. I'm like Wendy, I never recommended being an art curator, running galleries, as well as being an artist. I recommend that you either call or email them and ask them if they're accepting new artists. First question out of that. And before you even do that, like Wendy, you need to go to that gallery or go to that gallery's website, see if your work fits with their work, see if your price point fits with their price point. Because, like Wendy said, no gallery is going to carry you, even if they love your work, if they don't think you're going to approach them. You shouldn't ask the gallery if you're a good fit. You should know that research on your own. And I also highly encourage you to ask them how you'd like to accept a proposal for new work. Because some people like it digitally, some people like it still printed out hard copy, some people want you to come and meet them in person, some people want to Skype. I mean, there's all kinds of options, but asking them their preferred method is key. And then my last little tip that I have that is, as a curator, is a tip that I find that's really advantageous. I think every single artist should create an art postcard of some kind that identifies themselves, their website, their address, their phone number, all that contact information, and 1 or 2 or 3 photos of their work. And if you are doing a booth at Art in the Park, you mail that postcard to every single museum and every single gallery across the nation that you would love to have your work shown at. Because what happens is, as a curator at a museum, I get a kabillion art cards for a kabillion events or things that are happening from artists. And they're unsolicited. I didn't ask for them. But what happens is I don't throw them away. I have an intern at my museum that has a ceramics file, and has a glass file, and has a kinetic sculpture file, and blacksmithing file. And when they get those cards, they throw them in those files. And then when it's time for me to curate a show, and I have an exhibitions committee that at one point this happened when they said, we want you to do a blacksmithing show. Well, I didn't know diddly squat about blacksmithing. And so I thought, oh my gosh, where am I going to start? Oh, I have a metal file. Pulled out my metal file, started kind of going through those cards, and that was just that first step of how I started picking artists. So when you think about galleries who actually create specific exhibitions, like the Spiral one, think about museums, art curators. Who are the 5 top art curators at the 5 top museums that you would love to actually have your work shown at someday? You know, start sending them your art cards, start sending them your press release, and any information, even if it's unsolicited, because it's kind of also like an ad where they say it has to run in a place 3 times for someone to actually recognize it and see it. Same thing with art. Enter jury shows. You'd be surprised at how small the pool of jurors that do these national and local and regional jury shows. I probably jury about 20 shows a year. I'm sure Wendy, you're probably up there too. I mean, we start to recognize artwork as it goes through from show to show to show. So there's a lot of those kind of tips and tricks that help you get your work seen a little bit more. I could go on forever, so I'll stop.
I could relax.
Okay. Hey, free meal, I'm free wine, I'm game. I'm right there.
Okay, thank you, James. That's our last slide for this panel. But if we have time for a few questions from the audience, if anyone has any questions they want to ask. Yeah.
I don't have a question, but Pamela's been great. Whitney's been amazing. At first I was thinking, I wish she could talk slower, and then it was like, I wish she could never talk.
Thank you, I'm sorry.
Really, no. But you're absolutely right. Years ago, I was doing ceramic work, and I wound up getting a show in Charleston, and I got a grant to do the show, which was interesting, through their small art cultural council. And so with that grant money, I hired a person to do everything that I couldn't do because I needed to make the work. So I said to her, I got a card from, what is it called, postcard something out of California, where you put a piece that you like on 4 pieces that you like, and then you have all your information. And I have to go get every magazine, Southern Living, Art in America, everything, and send the postcards to everybody that might be interested in the show that was going to be happening in 3 months. Well, only one call. I only got one call, and it was the evening after I had set up the show. I was exhausted. I had 15 pieces with pedestals, and it was a Herculean task. I got home that night, and I got into bed, and this was, I guess, 15 years ago, and the sun was going down, and the phone rang. And I said, oh, I want to answer it. I said, oh, I want to. And this woman called, and she was pretending to be a hotel monitor for minutes. She goes, is this interview? And I went, yes. And she said, oh, I'm so sorry. She goes, I'm from Art Calendar, and I love your piece, and I want to put it on the cover of the magazine. It's show. That was sort of trying. and so, and then she said, do you want $15 for like 1,000 copies of the cover? I said, 50,000 copies for $50 isn't going to do me any good. And so it was so worth it to have that. And now, you know, I have still about 100 left. And I use it as stationery, and I send it out. And so getting it out there is probably one of the single most important things you can do. That's really great. And that was personal experience.
Thank you. Yeah.
Adding to what you just said, one way I got my artwork out that is a really good way is donating it to benefits where they have them auctioned off. I donated a piece to Our Voice that was bought, and also to the Lemon Foundation that helps kids that are sponsors of the Truffle Fest that's each year. So I got a free ticket to the Truffle Fest, and the piece was sold, and then the Our Voice. So that's another way, is donating pieces to different causes that you believe in.
Thank you. Yeah, no. Oh, here.
Talking in the microphone. We'll give it a shot. I really have a question, but kind of an answer, or just a little bit to add to some of the things.
You even have to hold the mic up closer to your mouth.
Something to add to some of the things that were said about surviving in a slow market, documenting your art, bringing value to it, and getting it out there. I started selling art coming out of college, and I found that you can only sell one original. You can sell a lot of prints of something. And Lorraine, brought this up about printing on plexiglass. And I think that's there's this sort of attachment in the world of art to the original. If you think about it, like, at least for me, all the art that I've been moved by the most in my life, I've only ever seen pictures of. I've never stood on the assistant seal. I've never stood next to the data. I haven't seen a lot of dollars worth, but it still has completely changed me and changed the way I view art. So I think the idea of kind of letting go of the idea of the original and more focusing on the experience of the art that you make. So for a sculptor, it's not going to be as easy, obviously. No one's going to buy a picture of a sculpture. For two-dimensional artists, and for painters, for printmakers, and even for Melissa's work, I think printing is a really good way to survive in a market where people can't spend thousands of dollars on art. If they want to spend $20, they can spend $30. You can get a piece of your work. It gets out there. It's on the wall. The experience is being had, and more people will see it. So it's kind of like, for me, I found it really helped me to solve a lot of those problems. And then, when you sell your original, it's worth more. I was only able to get the money that I was able to get out of a lot of my originals after selling prints of them for years and years. And that was just, a little bit that I wanted to add on to what was said. And this has been really good. And thank you for everyone who's been part of this. It's been really, really helpful. For sure.
Thank you. Right, thank you. Oh, another question. Okay.
For those of us who create items that would qualify for the Southern Highland Craft Guild, I'm wondering if you would speak to the pros and cons of going through that process to become a member.
Can you repeat the question?
The pros and cons of going through the process of submission to the Southern Highland Craft Guild. I don't know if there are any cons. I'm along with the category of people that believe that the more eyes that see your work, the better, even if they reject you. And they will. Most likely. On the first pass, the second, maybe the third, maybe the fourth. I had a client who got herself all worked up, ceramic artist, about making that application. It's just so irritating. Yes. And I said, you've got nothing, absolutely nothing to lose. Go for it. And be warned. They got a lot of applicants. It's a different panel each time. You don't know how the cards are going to fall. They can only pick so many people. Don't get your fingers in a twist if you don't get in. Well, she
didn't get in. I said, do it again, do it again, do it again, aren't you? Do it again. Okay. She did it again, she got in. You know, and it happened that second time. So the pros are affiliation with a highly respected organization, and you can decide how much you want to be an active part of it once you're in. But to have those kind of credentials with any well-known organization is very worth your time. I don't think there's a downside to it.
There's good time from the money.
That it takes a lot of time and money to be a member. I don't think it takes a lot of time and money to be a member, but if you want to be as active as possible, yes, like everything else, if there's an investment, you know, if you're going to do the twice annual shows, if you're going to do exhibits at the facility, you know, if you take advantage of everything, there's going to be some expense, but chances are your sales are going to go up. I'm sorry, I have to cut us off, but I want to thank the panel. And in about 5 minutes, we're going to come back for our next one on pricing and marketing.